When I studied CPE, I was in amongst quite a diverse group of students, and as I reflect on that, it became a key theme that I wanted to talk about today. In Australia's ever-diversifying faith environment, I find it interesting that more and more people I meet are either spiritual but not really religious, and if they are aligned with a particular faith, that they are increasingly open to interfaith dialogue. According to Pew Research and America's Huffington Post, I quote, I'm going to read a quote here, "At the heart of American faith's evolution is what religion journalist Krista Tippett calls a proliferation of ways to engage spiritual practice." She says, yes, you'll still find Bibles in hotel rooms, but you'll also see yoga and meditation rooms in some airports and Muslim prayer spaces on many college campuses. What it means to be spiritual and how that looks in practice is rapidly changing and diversifying. But rather than diminishing Americans' faith, this transformation is also crystallising certain core values like service, community, and connection to something greater than ourselves, end quote. If Australia follows in a similar cultural expression to America, what does this mean for CPE as it grows into the future? How can we learn the languages of different faith traditions, at least enough to be able to understand what being in tune may be from various perspectives? Exploring new ways to share concepts about being in tune requires stepping out of one's own faith and religion. As students understand what being in tune may be for them, they grow into their pastoral identities. In CPE, if we relate an analogy of music and its many varied notes to that of the many varied faith traditions and spiritual practices, then I ask, how can we learn to compose music together that is uniquely giving voice to each musician, but also creating a complete sound of the whole composition? How can CPE supervisors tune into the possibility of finding new and diverse ways to describe to students what being in tune is? Here's an example of how one may describe being in tune. This morning I prayed to God. I asked that His word would be heard in me today. I listened to His voice, and God sent me to several patients to be in communion with them. I was meant to see them and do God's work. And here is another example, but using different words. If I think about all of the things that kind of lined up yesterday, I can see that there was a flow to it. Even when there were hold-ups, I could recognise that they were like the sacred pauses that needed to be there to allow things to unfold in just the right way. Perhaps a good question to ask is, how can we tune into that, whatever that is, for each individual? When each of us are aligned with our own sense of tuning in, then that's like placing the vibrating tuning fork on the table and creating opportunity for its sound to be heard. How can we use metaphors, stories, and different words to explain what being in tune is from various perspectives? Are there existing stories from your favourite spiritual texts that demonstrate what being in tune is? If you are a Christian, you may say that being in tune is listening to God. A Buddhist may say that being in tune is to be guided by compassion and mindfulness. Someone who is secular may say that being in tune is feeling in the flow. A Muslim may say that being in tune is submitting to Allah and obeying His commands. These are obviously examples, and there are no definitive answers, but let's explore now some ways of saying that one thing of being in tune using different words. This next exercise is for the purpose of helping each student to affirm their own ways of working and to understand how they know the way of being in tune for themselves. I invite you again to pair up and explore how your earlier description of being in tune can be said differently. Maybe you might refer to a spiritual story or a metaphor or real-life examples, but try to come up with, say, 3 different ways of explaining what being in tune may be from various perspectives on faith, on wisdom and life. And again, I'll give this exercise several minutes and I'll ring a bell at the end, and I'd like us to share a couple of the findings and the answers together.